The notification lit up my phone at exactly 9:47 on a Tuesday night. The family group chat, usually dead for weeks at a time, suddenly exploded with a single message from my mother. Stay away from us forever. You are no longer part of this family. The words glowed on my screen like they'd been branded there. No context. No explanation. Just exile, delivered through a text bubble with a period at the end for emphasis. My hands went numb holding the phone. I sat on the edge of my couch in my Pearl District loft, the city lights of Portland flickering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 20 minutes later, my sister Nicole sent a follow-up. We all agree. Don't contact any of us again. Then my brother Brandon, always the one to pile on when the wind was already blowing. You know what you did? For words that meant nothing and everything at once. I scrolled up through months of mundane exchanges, birthday reminders, forwarded memes, pictures of my niece's soccer games. Nothing hinted at this. Nothing prepared me for being erased. But here's what they didn't know. 3 days earlier, I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. And now their desperate message made perfect sense. It started the previous Saturday afternoon. I'd driven to my mother's house in the Hawthorne district to pick up Lily from what was supposed to be a fun grandmother-granddaughter day. The house stood tall and narrow, painted a muted sage green with white trim. The kind of place that looked warm in photographs but always felt cold when you stood inside it. My mother Trish had lived there for 15 years, ever since she married Robert, a man whose presence in a room was like a draft you couldn't locate. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Robert's car was gone. My mother's silver sedan sat alone near the garage. I texted her that I'd arrived, expecting Lily to come bounding out the front door the way she always did. Backpack half-zipped and talking a mile a minute about whatever craft project they'd done. Instead, my mother appeared on the porch, arms crossed, her smile thin and practiced. She waved me inside. That should have been my first warning. The living room smelled like lavender oil and something faintly medicinal, the scent my mother used to cover up the mustiness of old furniture she refused to replace. Lily sat on the couch, unusually quiet, a coloring book open in her lap but no crayons in her hands. She looked up when I walked in, her expression unreadable for a 7-year-old. My mother gestured to the armchair across from the couch, the one with the high back that made you feel like you were being interrogated. Sit for a minute, she said. We need to talk. I didn't sit. I stood near the doorway, keys still in my hand, my instincts already prickling. Talk about what? I asked. She glanced at Lily, then back at me. Her voice dropped to that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable but was actually cornering you. Robert and I have been talking. We think it might be good for Lily to spend more time here. Maybe even stay with us during the week. You know, for stability. The word hung in the air like a trap. Stability. I looked at Lily, whose eyes were fixed on the coloring book, her small fingers gripping the edges of the page. She wasn't coloring. She wasn't moving. She was listening. I kept my voice level. She has stability. She's happy. She's doing great in school. My mother tilted her head, her expression shifting into something almost pitying. Jordan, we're just concerned. You work so much. You're alone. Lily needs structure, routine. We can provide that. The implication was clear. I was failing. I was insufficient. And they were positioning themselves as the solution. I felt my throat tighten but forced myself to stay calm. I appreciate the offer, but Lily and I are fine. We're going to head home now. I reached for Lily's hand, but my mother stepped slightly to the side, not blocking me exactly, just occupying space in a way that made leaving feel harder. Think about it, she said. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. I didn't think about it. I took Lily's hand and walked out, her small fingers curling tightly around mine as we crossed the lawn to my car. Once we were buckled in and pulling away from the curb, Lily finally spoke. Grandma said I might get to have my own room there. A big one. Her voice was uncertain, like she was testing the idea aloud. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Did you tell Grandma you wanted that? I asked gently. She shook her head. She just said it. Said it would be nice. My stomach nodded. They were planting seeds. Carefully. Strategically. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. My mother's tone. Her word choices. The way she'd framed it as concern rather than demand. It felt rehearsed. And that thought kept me awake until the early hours, my mind circling the same question. What were they planning? Monday morning, I dropped Lily off at Bridgeport Elementary and drove to my office in a fog. I worked as a project coordinator for a small marketing firm downtown, the kind of job that kept me busy but didn't define me. My desk faced a window overlooking Waterfront Park, and I often found myself staring at the joggers and dog walkers, envying their uncomplicated forward motion. I tried to focus on spreadsheets and emails, but my thoughts kept drifting back to my mother's living room, to the way Lily had gone quiet, to the word stability used like a weapon. Around noon my phone buzzed. A text from Nicole. Hey, can you send me Lily's school schedule? Mom wants to know when she could pick her up if needed. My fingers hovered over the screen. Why would Mom need that? I typed back. Just in case, Nicole replied. You know, for emergencies. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the family group chat and scrolled back through weeks of messages. There was nothing overt, but the pattern was there. Small questions. Casual inquiries. When does Lily have dance class? What time does she get home from school? Does she ever stay with a babysitter? They were gathering information. That evening I called Amanda, my best friend since college, and the only person I trusted with the messy parts of my life. She lived in Beaverton with her husband and 2 kids, and her house always smelled like whatever elaborate dinner she just pulled out of the oven. I sat in my car outside her place, the engine off, and told her everything. The conversation at my mother's house. Nicole's text. The slow creep of dread I couldn't shake. Amanda listened without interrupting, which was one of the reasons I loved her. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Jordan, that sounds like they're building a case. A case for what? I asked, though part of me already knew. Custody. Guardianship. Something. You need to be careful. The word careful echoed in my head long after we hung up. I drove home through streets slick with autumn rain. The city lights smearing across my windshield. And I realized I wasn't just being paranoid. I was being hunted. Tuesday morning, I woke to a missed call from my brother Brandon. No voicemail. Just the call logged at 6:15 in the morning. An hour when he was never awake unless something was wrong. I called him back during my commute, the phone ringing 4 times before he picked up. His voice was clipped. Yeah. Hey, I just saw you called, I said. Everything okay? There was a pause long enough that I almost repeated the question. Mom's worried about you, he said finally. She thinks you're stressed. Overwhelmed. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. I'm fine, Brandon. Seriously. Are you though? Because Lily mentioned you've been tired. That you forget things sometimes. My blood went cold. When did Lily say that? I don't know. Mom told me. Look, I'm not trying to start anything. I just think maybe you should let them help more. Take some of the pressure off. His tone was casual, almost friendly, but the words felt scripted, like someone had fed him the lines. I ended the call with a vague promise to think about it, but my hands were shaking as I parked outside my office building. I couldn't focus that day. I kept replaying Brandon's words. Lily mentioned you've been tired. You forget things sometimes. I hadn't forgotten anything. I wasn't overwhelmed, but if they were telling Lily to say these things, or worse, if they were manipulating her memories, then this was deeper than I'd realized. I thought about texting my mother directly, confronting her, demanding to know what she was doing. But something stopped me. Instinct maybe. Or strategy. If I revealed that I knew, they'd change tactics. They'd go underground. I needed to understand the full picture first. That afternoon, I made an excuse to leave work early. I told preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I told my boss I had a doctor's appointment and drove straight to my mother's house. Her car was in the driveway, but Robert's wasn't. I parked down the street, far enough that she wouldn't see me if she looked out the window. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to see something, anything that would confirm what I was feeling. I waited 20 minutes before Nicole's car pulled up. She got out carrying a manila folder, the kind you use for documents, and walked up the porch steps. My mother opened the door before Nicole even knocked. They hugged briefly, then disappeared inside. I sat in my car, engine off, watching the house like it was a crime scene. 10 minutes later, Robert's truck turned onto the street. He parked in the driveway and went inside without glancing around. I waited another 30 minutes, my heart pounding in a way that felt both ridiculous and justified. Then the front door opened again. All three of them stepped onto the porch. My mother, Nicole, and Robert. They stood in a loose circle talking. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see their faces. My mother's expression was animated, almost excited. Nicole nodded along, her arms crossed in that defensive posture she always took when she was agreeing to something she wasn't entirely comfortable with. Robert just stood there, hands in his pockets, his face blank. Then my mother handed Nicole the manila folder. Nicole tucked it under her arm, said something that made my mother laugh, and walked back to her car. I ducked low in my seat as she drove past, my pulse hammering in my ears. When I finally straightened up, my mother and Robert had gone back inside. The house looked peaceful, ordinary, like nothing at all had just happened. But I knew better. I sat there in the fading daylight, the streetlights beginning to flicker on one by one, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to make the next move. I was going to find out exactly what they were planning, and I was going to stop it. I drove home that evening with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The rain had started again, typical for Portland in late October, and the wipers scraped rhythmically across the windshield as I replayed what I just witnessed. My mother handing Nicole that folder. The three of them standing on the porch like conspirators at the end of a meeting. The way Nicole had tucked it under her arm so carefully, like it contained something precious or damaging or both. By the time I pulled into my building's parking garage, I'd made up my mind. I needed to know what was in that folder. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school and immediately called Nicole. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice light and casual. "Hey," I said when she picked up. "I was thinking maybe we could grab coffee this week. It's been forever since we actually talked." There was a pause on the other end, just long enough to make me wonder if she'd refuse. Then she said, "Sure, yeah, that would be nice. How about Thursday?" I agreed and we settled on Blue Moon Cafe, a place on Burnside Street that was always busy enough to provide cover, but quiet enough to have a real conversation. When I hung up, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I didn't know what I was going to say to her. Just knew I needed to see her face when I asked the right questions. Thursday arrived with a cold snap that made the city feel sharper, more awake. I got to the cafe 10 minutes early and chose a table near the back, away from the windows but with a clear view of the entrance. Nicole walked in exactly on time, her coat buttoned up to her chin, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked polished and put together in a way that always made me feel slightly disheveled by comparison. She spotted me and waved, her smile bright but not quite reaching her eyes. We ordered coffee and made small talk for the first few minutes. She asked about Lily, about work, about whether I'd started my holiday shopping yet. I answered on autopilot, waiting for the right moment to shift the conversation. Finally, when there was a lull, I leaned forward slightly and said, "So I was at Mom's the other day. Saw you stop by." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Oh yeah," she said, stirring her latte even though she hadn't added anything to it. "Just dropping something off." I nodded slowly. "What were you dropping off?" She looked up at me then, her face carefully neutral. "Just some paperwork. For Mom. Nothing important." The lie was so smooth it almost sounded true. I wanted to push harder, to demand she tell me what was in the folder, but I knew that would only make her shut down completely. Instead, I shifted tactics. "Mom's been acting kind of strange lately," I said. "Like she's worried about something. Have you noticed?" Nicole shrugged, her gaze drifting to the window. "She's always worried about something. You know how she is." I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. Then I said, "She brought up the idea of Lily staying with her more. Like during the week. Did she mention that to you?" Nicole's hand stilled on her cup. She didn't look at me. "She might have said something," she replied carefully. "I think she just wants to help. You've been working a lot." "It's not a criticism, Jordan. It's just an observation." There it was again. That word. Observation. Like they'd all gotten together and decided on the language they'd use, the narrative they'd build. I kept my voice even. "I'm not overwhelmed, Nicole. I'm doing fine. Lily's doing fine. I don't need help." She finally met my eyes, and for a brief second I saw something there that looked almost like guilt. "I know," she said quietly, "but Mom doesn't always see it that way. You know how she gets when she has an idea in her head." The conversation drifted after that back to safer topics, but the damage was done. I'd confirmed what I already suspected. They were coordinating. And Nicole, whether willingly or reluctantly, was part of it. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and started doing something I never thought I'd have to do. I began documenting everything. I opened a fresh document and titled it Timeline. Then I started writing. Every strange comment my mother had made. Every odd question from Nicole or Brandon. The conversation about Lily staying with them. Brandon's early morning phone call. The folder I'd seen Nicole take. I wrote down dates and times as best as I could remember them. I noted who said what and where. It felt paranoid and extreme, but Amanda's words kept echoing in my head. They're building a case. If that was true, I needed to build one too. Friday morning, I woke up to another text in the family group chat. This one was from my mother. "Family dinner this Sunday at 6. Everyone needs to be there. No exceptions." I stared at the message for a long time. The tone was different from her usual invitations. It wasn't a question or a suggestion. It was a command. Nicole responded first with a thumbs up emoji. Then Brandon with a simple "I'll be there." Robert didn't respond at all, which was typical for him. But his silence somehow felt more ominous than the other's confirmation. I didn't reply right away. I wanted to ignore it completely, to refuse on principle, but I knew that would only make things worse. So I typed out a short response. "I'll try to make it." The vagueness was intentional. I wasn't committing, but I wasn't refusing either. The weekend dragged by in a haze of anxiety. I took Lily to the park on Saturday, pushing her on the swings and watching her climb the jungle gym, and I tried to focus on her laughter, on the simplicity of the moment. But my mind kept drifting to Sunday dinner. What were they planning? Was this just a normal family meal, or was it something more? By the time Sunday evening arrived, I'd convinced myself I had to go. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see what they were up to. I dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a sweater that looked casual but not sloppy. I wanted to appear calm and unbothered. I pulled my hair back and checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired but steady. Good enough. I arrived at my mother's house at 6:15. Fashionably late, but not so late it would be remarked upon. Nicole's car was already there, along with Brandon's truck and Robert's sedan. The whole family assembled. I took a deep breath and walked up the porch steps. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her smile wide and welcoming. "Jordan," she said warmly, pulling me into a hug that felt too tight. "I'm so glad you made it." I stepped inside and immediately felt the weight of eyes on me. Nicole was in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch with a glass of white wine in her hand. Brandon stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Robert hovered in the doorway to the kitchen, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. They all looked at me like I was a specimen under glass. Dinner was set up in the dining room, the table covered with a lace cloth and set with my mother's good china. It was excessive for a casual family meal, and the formality of it put me even more on edge. We sat down and my mother began passing dishes. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, a salad with too much dressing. Everyone took their portions in silence. The only sound was the scrape of serving spoons against ceramic. Finally Brandon spoke. "So Jordan, how's work been?" "Fine," I said, cutting into my chicken. "Busy but fine." He nodded like I'd said something profound. "And Lily?" "She's doing great," I replied, my voice steady. "School's going well. She loves her teacher." My mother smiled at that, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's wonderful," she said. "You know, Robert and I were just talking about how well adjusted she is. Such a bright, happy kid." I felt the trap closing, but I didn't know where it was yet. "Thanks," I said carefully. Nicole leaned forward slightly, her wine glass cradled in both hands. "It must be hard though," she said, her tone sympathetic. "Balancing everything. Work and parenting and just, life." I looked at her, trying to read her expression. "It's manageable," I said. Brandon set down his fork, the clink of metal on china louder than it should have been. "Mom mentioned you seemed stressed last time she saw you," he said. "Like maybe you could use some support." And there it was. the coordinated effort, the carefully rehearsed concern. I set my own fork down and folded my hands in my lap, forcing myself to stay calm. I appreciate the concern, I said slowly, but I'm not stressed. I'm handling things just fine. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was cool and dry. Jordan, sweetheart, we're not attacking you. We're your family. We just want to make sure you're okay. And that Lily's okay. The implication was clear. They were questioning my ability to parent. They were framing their interference as care. I pulled my hand away gently but firmly. Lily is more than okay, I said. She's thriving. And so am I. Robert finally spoke, his voice low and measured. No one's saying you're not doing your best, Jordan. But sometimes our best isn't enough. Sometimes we need help. The room went silent. I looked around the table at their faces. My mother's practiced concern. Nicole's uncomfortable agreement. Brandon's flat stare. Robert's cold assessment. They'd rehearsed this. They'd planned it down to the phrases they'd use, the tone they'd adopt. And I realized in that moment that this dinner wasn't about reconciliation or support. It was an intervention. Or more accurately, it was the opening move in something much bigger. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. I think I need to go, I said. My mother's expression shifted, the warmth draining from it. Jordan, sit down. We're not finished talking. I shook my head. Yes, we are. I'm not doing this. Nicole stood too, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Jordan, please. Just listen for a minute. But I was already moving toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed my coat from the hook in the entryway and turned back to face them. Whatever this is, I said, my voice shaking slightly, whatever you're trying to do, it's not going to work. I'm Lily's parent, not you. And that's not going to change. My mother's face hardened. We'll see about that, she said quietly. I walked out into the cold night air, my breath coming in short bursts. I didn't look back as I got into my car and pulled away from the curb. My hands were trembling on the wheel and my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. By the time I got home, the family group chat had exploded. My mother had sent a long message about how disappointed she was, how I'd overreacted, how they were only trying to help. Nicole had chimed in with her own message, softer but still pointed. Even Brandon had added a line about me needing to calm down and think about what's best for Lily. I turned my phone off and sat in the darkness of my living room, the city lights filtering through the windows, and I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. Monday morning I called in sick to work. I couldn't face the office, couldn't pretend everything was normal. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up the timeline document I'd started and added everything from Sunday dinner, the coordinated messaging, the implied threats, my mother's final words. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I searched for family lawyers in Portland. The list was overwhelming. Dozens of firms, each with polished websites and promises of compassionate representation. I scrolled through them aimlessly, not sure what I was even looking for. Then I saw a name that stopped me. Wilson and Associates, specializing in custody disputes and family law. I clicked on the site and read through the attorney profiles. One name stood out. Catherine Wilson, the senior partner. Her bio was impressive, but what caught my attention was a line near the end. Committed to protecting parents' rights against unjust interference. I picked up my phone and called before I could talk myself out of it. The receptionist who answered was brisk but kind. She took my name and number and said someone would call me back within the hour. I paced my apartment while I waited, checking my phone every few minutes. 40 minutes later it rang. This is Catherine Wilson, a calm voice said. I understand you're looking for legal consultation regarding a family matter. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I think my family is trying to build a case to take custody of my daughter. There was a pause, then, I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible. Can you come in this afternoon? I agreed immediately and she gave me the address. Her office was downtown, not far from Waterfront Park. I hung up and sat down heavily on my couch, the weight of what I was about to do settling over me. I was preparing to go to war with my own family. The law office was on the 12th floor of a steel and glass building that overlooked the Willamette River. The reception area was understated but elegant, with modern furniture and abstract art on the walls. I gave my name to the receptionist and sat down to wait. 5 minutes later, a woman in her mid-40s appeared. She was tall and slim, with dark hair pulled into a bun and sharp, assessing eyes. "Jordan Hayes," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Kate Wilson." I shook her hand and followed her down a hallway to a corner office, with floor-to-ceiling windows. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and sat down, folding her hands in front of her. "Tell me what's going on," she said. I told her everything. The conversation at my mother's house about Lily staying with them. The text from Nicole and Brandon. The dinner on Sunday. The implied threats. I pulled out my phone and showed her the family group chat messages, the timeline I'd been building. She listened without interrupting, her expression neutral but focused. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. "Do you have any documentation of these conversations beyond the text messages?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just what I've written down. Dates and times and what was said." She nodded slowly. "That's a start. But if they're building a case against you, they'll have more than that. They'll have witnesses, possibly even recordings. Have you noticed anything unusual in your home? Any new devices, cameras, anything out of place?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it, running through the rooms of my apartment in my mind. I hadn't noticed anything obvious, but then again I hadn't been looking. "I don't think so," I said. "But I haven't really checked." "You need to check," she said firmly. "And you need to start documenting everything. Every interaction with your family, every conversation, every text. If this goes to court, and it sounds like it might, you need a record that's as detailed as theirs." She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a small business card. "This is a colleague of mine," she said, sliding it across the desk. "Marcus Chun. He's a tech specialist. He can sweep your home for surveillance devices and help you secure your communications." I took the card, my hand trembling slightly. "You think they'd actually bug my apartment?" I asked. She met my eyes, her expression serious. "If they're serious about taking custody, they'll do whatever they think is necessary. And from what you've told me, they sound very serious." I left her office with a retainer agreement signed and a plan in place. Kate would start filing preliminary motions to protect my custody rights while I gathered more evidence. In the meantime, I was supposed to act normal. Keep going to work. Keep engaging with my family as if nothing had changed. Don't tip them off that I knew what they were doing. It was the same advice Amanda had given me, but hearing it from a lawyer made it feel more real, more urgent. I drove home in a daze, the city moving past my windows in a blur of gray sky and wet pavement. When I got back to my apartment, I stood in the doorway and looked around with fresh eyes. Suddenly, every corner felt suspicious. Every bookshelf, every lamp, every smoke detector. I pulled out the business card Kate had given me and called the number. A man answered on the second ring. "This is Marcus. Kate Wilson gave me your number," I said. "She said you could help me check my apartment for surveillance devices." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I can be there in an hour." When Marcus arrived, he was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a messenger bag slung over one shoulder. He introduced himself with a quick handshake and immediately got to work. He pulled out a device that looked like a small radar gun and began sweeping the apartment methodically. He checked the walls, the outlets, the light fixtures. He examined my smoke detectors and the vents in the ceiling. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching him move from room to room. After about 20 minutes, he stopped in my bedroom. He was standing near my nightstand, his device aimed at the lamp. He frowned and adjusted a dial, then leaned closer. "You've got something here," he said. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He carefully unscrewed the base of the lamp and tilted it toward the light. Inside, nestled in the hollow base, was a small black device no bigger than a USB drive. "A camera," he said flatly. "Wireless. Probably transmitting to a local receiver. Someone's been watching you." I felt the room tilt. I reached out and steadied myself against the dresser. "How long has it been there?" I asked. He examined it more closely. "Hard to say. Could be days, could be weeks." "When's the last time someone else was in your apartment?" I thought back. My mother had stopped by 2 weeks ago to drop off some of Lily's clothes she'd washed. I'd let her in, made her tea, and she'd used the bathroom. I'd been in the kitchen the whole time, not paying attention to where she went after. She could have easily slipped into my bedroom. 2 weeks ago, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother was here. Marcus nodded grimly. That lines up. He pulled out a small tool and carefully disconnected the device, placing it in a static bag. I'll check the rest of the apartment, he said. If there's one, there might be more. He found 2 more. One in the living room, hidden inside a decorative picture frame I'd had for years. Another in the bathroom tucked behind the mirror. By the time he finished, I was sitting on the couch, my head in my hands, trying to process what this meant. My mother had violated my home. She'd watched me in my most private moments. She'd recorded me without my knowledge or consent. Marcus sat down across from me, his expression sympathetic but professional. I'm going to take these to a colleague who can analyze them, he said. We'll figure out where the signal was going and who was on the other end. In the meantime, you need to change your locks, your passwords, everything. And don't let anyone from your family into this apartment again. Not until this is resolved. I nodded numbly. He handed me a card with his contact information and stood to leave. I'll be in touch within 48 hours, he said. And Jordan, you did the right thing calling me. This is serious. But now you have proof. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time. The silence felt different now, heavier, like the walls themselves had been tainted. I thought about all the times I'd changed clothes in my bedroom, all the conversations I'd had on the phone thinking I was alone, all the moments I believed were private. They'd seen it all, recorded it all, and they were planning to use it against me. I pulled out my phone and called Kate Wilson. When she answered, I didn't bother with pleasantries. They bugged my apartment, I said. My mother put cameras in my bedroom, my bathroom, my living room. There was a pause. Then her voice came back sharp and focused. Do not touch anything else. Do not remove anything. I've already had someone come and take them, I said. A tech specialist. Marcus Chun. Good, she said. That's good. We need those devices analyzed. This changes everything, Jordan. If they've been surveilling you illegally, that's a criminal matter. We can use this. But you need to be very careful from here on out. They're going to know something's wrong when those cameras stop transmitting. They might escalate. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining my mother sitting somewhere with a screen in front of her, watching me sleep, watching me live. The violation of it made my skin crawl. At some point, exhaustion won and I drifted into a restless sleep filled with dreams of being watched, of cameras hidden in every corner, of my family standing around me in a circle, their faces blank and accusing. I woke up Tuesday morning to the sound of my phone buzzing. Another message in the family group chat. This time from my mother. We need to talk, Jordan. This has gone on long enough. Call me. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked the group chat entirely. If they wanted to talk to me, they'd have to do it through my lawyer. I wasn't playing their game anymore. The silence from my family lasted exactly 36 hours. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was in a meeting at work reviewing quarterly projections with my team, my phone began vibrating in my pocket. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. I excused myself and stepped into the "Someone's been watching you." I felt the room tilt. I reached out and steadied myself against the dresser. How long has it been there, I asked. He examined it more closely. Hard to say. Could be days, could be weeks. When's the last time someone else was in your apartment? I thought back. My mother had stopped by 2 weeks ago to drop off some of Lily's clothes she'd washed. I'd let her in, made her tea, and she'd used the bathroom. I'd been in the kitchen the whole time, not paying attention to where she went after. She could have easily slipped into my bedroom. 2 weeks ago, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother was here. Marcus nodded grimly. That lines up. He pulled out a small tool and carefully disconnected the device, placing it in a static bag. I'll check the rest of the apartment, he said. If there's one, there might be more. He found 2 more. One in the living room, hidden inside a decorative picture frame I'd had for years. Another in the bathroom tucked behind the mirror. By the time he finished, I was sitting on the couch, my head in my hands, trying to process what this meant. My mother had violated my home. She'd watched me in my most private moments. She'd recorded me without my knowledge or consent. Marcus sat down across from me, his expression sympathetic but professional. I'm going to take these to a colleague who can analyze them, he said. We'll figure out where the signal was going and who was on the other end. In the meantime, you need to change your locks, your passwords, everything. And don't let anyone from your family into this apartment again. Not until this is resolved. I nodded numbly. He handed me a card with his contact information and stood to leave. I'll be in touch within 48 hours, he said. And Jordan, you did the right thing calling me. This is serious. But now you have proof. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time. The silence felt different now, heavier, like the walls themselves had been tainted. I thought about all the times I'd changed clothes in my bedroom, all the conversations I'd had on the phone thinking I was alone, all the moments I believed were private. They'd seen it all, recorded it all, and they were planning to use it against me. I pulled out my phone and called Kate Wilson. When she answered, I didn't bother with pleasantries. They bugged my apartment, I said. My mother put cameras in my bedroom, my bathroom, my living room. There was a pause. Then her voice came back sharp and focused. Do not touch anything else. Do not remove anything. I've already had someone come and take them, I said. A tech specialist. Marcus Chun. Good, she said. That's good. We need those devices analyzed. This changes everything, Jordan. If they've been surveilling you illegally, that's a criminal matter. We can use this. But you need to be very careful from here on out. They're going to know something's wrong when those cameras stop transmitting. They might escalate. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining my mother sitting somewhere with a screen in front of her, watching me sleep, watching me live. The violation of it made my skin crawl. At some point, exhaustion won and I drifted into a restless sleep filled with dreams of being watched, of cameras hidden in every corner, of my family standing around me in a circle, their faces blank and accusing. I woke up Tuesday morning to the sound of my phone buzzing. Another message in the family group chat. This time from my mother. We need to talk, Jordan. This has gone on long enough. Call me. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked the group chat entirely. If they wanted to talk to me, they'd have to do it through my lawyer. I wasn't playing their game anymore. The silence from my family lasted exactly 36 hours. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was in a meeting at work reviewing quarterly projections with my team, my phone began vibrating in my pocket. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. I excused myself and stepped into the child my family had described. When we got home, I made her favorite dinner, mac and cheese with broccoli, and we ate together at the kitchen table. Halfway through the meal, I set down my fork and said gently, Lily, has Grandma or Aunt Nicole asked you questions about me lately? About how things are at home? Lily looked up from her plate, a noodle dangling from her fork. She nodded. Grandma asks me stuff sometimes, like if you're tired or if you forget things. I kept my voice calm. And what do you tell her? Lily shrugged, unbothered. I just say you're regular. Like you're my mom. You do mom stuff. My heart ached at the simplicity of her answer. Have they ever told you to say anything specific? Like to your teacher or to anyone else? She shook her head. No. Why? I smiled and reached across to squeeze her hand. No reason, sweetie. I just want to make sure nobody's asking you weird questions. If they do, you can always tell me, okay? She nodded and went back to her dinner, the conversation already forgotten. But I held on to it, adding it to the growing list of things I'd need to document. They were coaching her or trying to. And now I had confirmation straight from Lily herself. Thursday morning, I met with Kate Wilson again. Her office felt different this time. Less intimidating and more like a war room. She had files spread across her desk, legal pads covered in notes, and her laptop open to what looked like a timeline similar to the one I'd been keeping. She gestured for me to sit and dove straight in. Marcus analyzed the cameras, she said. They were all transmitting to a single receiver. We traced the IP address to your mother's home. So now we have proof that she installed surveillance devices in your apartment without your consent. That's criminal. We can file charges if you want to go that route. Do you think I should? I asked. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. That depends on what you want the outcome to be. Criminal charges would be public. It would escalate things significantly. But it would also send a very clear message that you're not going to be bullied. I thought about it, weighing the options. Part of me wanted to see my mother face consequences for what she'd done. But another part of me, the part that still remembered family dinners and birthday parties and a time when we'd been close, hesitated. I don't want this to be public if it doesn't have to be, I said finally. I just want them to stop. I want to protect Lily and live our lives without looking over our shoulders. Kate nodded. Then we use it as leverage. We file for a restraining order, and we present the evidence of illegal surveillance as part of the case. It won't be criminal charges, but it will be on record. And it will give you legal protection. I agreed, and she began drafting the paperwork. As I sat there watching her work, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. For the first time since this all started, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. That afternoon, Kate filed the restraining order petition. It named my mother, Robert, Nicole, and Brandon. The grounds were harassment, illegal surveillance, and attempted interference with custody. Attached to the petition were the cameras Marcus had recovered, the analysis showing they'd been transmitting to my mother's house, screenshots of the manipulated text messages, and my written timeline of events. Kate warned me that they'd be served within 48 hours and that I should expect backlash. Be prepared for them to reach out, she said. They'll be angry. They might try to convince you to drop it. Don't engage. Forward any communication to me. I promised I would and left her office feeling both empowered and terrified. The servers showed up at my mother's house on Friday evening. I wasn't there to see it, but Nicole called me within minutes, her voice shaking with rage. How could you do this? She hissed into the phone. A restraining order? Against your own family? You're insane, Jordan. Completely insane. I didn't respond. I just listened to her rant, her words growing more desperate and accusatory with each passing second. When she finally paused for breath, I said quietly, "You can contact my lawyer if you have something to say." Then I hung up. My phone exploded after that. Text messages from Brandon calling me ungrateful and vindictive. A voicemail from Robert, his voice low and threatening, telling me I'd regret this. And finally, a long rambling message from my mother. It started with hurt confusion, progressed to anger, and ended with a chilling promise. You think you can keep Lily from me? You think a piece of paper is going to stop me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I forwarded everything to Kate and then turned my phone off completely. That night, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine I barely touched and stared out at the Portland skyline. The city looked peaceful from my window, lights twinkling in the distance, the river reflecting the glow. But inside my apartment, I felt like I was under siege. I thought about my mother's final message. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The words echoed in my head, ominous and vague. What was she capable of? What would she do next? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Saturday morning, I woke to pounding on my apartment door. Loud, insistent, aggressive. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and checked the peephole. 2 police officers stood in the hallway. My heart lurched. I opened the door, keeping the chain latched. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice hoarse. The older of the 2 officers, a man with gray at his temples and a weary expression, spoke first. "Are you Jordan Hayes?" I nodded. "We received a report that there's a child in danger at this address. We need to come in and conduct a welfare check." My stomach dropped. Lily was still asleep in her room. There was no danger. This was my family's doing. I forced myself to stay calm. "Of course," I said. "Let me just wake my daughter so she's not scared." I closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it fully. The officers stepped inside, their eyes scanning the apartment. It was tidy, clean, nothing out of place. One officer walked toward Lily's room while the other stayed with me in the living room. "Can I ask who made the report?" I said. The officer's expression was neutral. "Anonymous tip. Said there were concerns about the child's welfare. Possible neglect." I bit back, the anger rising in my throat. "There's no neglect. My daughter is healthy and happy. You're welcome to see for yourself." The officer who'd gone to Lily's room returned a moment later with Lily trailing behind him, rubbing her eyes and clutching her stuffed rabbit. She looked confused but not frightened. The officer knelt down to her level. "Hi there," he said gently. "I'm Officer Martinez. I just want to ask you a couple questions, okay? Are you doing okay? Do you feel safe here?" Lily nodded, her voice small but clear. "I'm okay. This is my home." The officer smiled. "That's good. Is your mom nice to you? Does she take care of you?" Lily looked at me, then back at the officer. "Yeah, She makes me dinner and helps with my homework and reads me stories. She's the best. The officer stood and nodded to his partner. They conferred quietly for a moment, then turned back to me. Everything looks fine here, Officer Martinez said. But we have to file a report. If there are any further complaints, child services might get involved. I recommend documenting your daily routine and keeping records of your daughter's well-being, just in case. I thanked them, my voice tight, and showed them to the door. The moment it closed behind them, I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. Lily climbed up next to me. Mom, why were the police here? Did we do something bad? I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. No, baby. We didn't do anything bad. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and call the police when they don't need to. But everything's okay. She seemed satisfied with that answer and wandered back to her room to play. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, my mind racing. An anonymous tip about child neglect. It was textbook. Create a paper trail. Get authorities involved. Make it look like there's a legitimate concern. Even. Breath, I said quietly, you can contact my lawyer if you have something to say. Then I hung up. My phone exploded after that. Text messages from Brandon calling me ungrateful and vindictive. A voicemail from Robert, his voice low and threatening, telling me I'd regret this. And finally, a long rambling message from my mother. It started with hurt confusion, progressed to anger, and ended with a chilling promise. You think you can keep Lily from me? You think a piece of paper is going to stop me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I forwarded everything to Kate and then turned my phone off completely. That night, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine I barely touched and stared out at the Portland skyline. The city looked peaceful from my window, lights twinkling in the distance, the river reflecting the glow. But inside my apartment, I felt like I was under siege. I thought about my mother's final message. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The words echoed in my head, ominous and vague. What was she capable of? What would she do next? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Saturday morning, I woke to pounding on my apartment door. Loud, insistent, aggressive. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and checked the peephole. 2 police officers stood in the hallway. My heart lurched. I opened the door, keeping the chain latched. Can I help you? I asked, my voice hoarse. The older of the 2 officers, a man with gray at his temples and a weary expression, spoke first. Are you Jordan Hayes? I nodded. We received a report that there's a child in danger at this address. We need to come in and conduct a welfare check. My stomach dropped. Lily was still asleep in her room. There was no danger. This was my family's doing. I forced myself to stay calm. Of course, I said. Let me just wake my daughter so she's not scared. I closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it fully. The officers stepped inside, their eyes scanning the apartment. It was tidy, clean, nothing out of place. One officer walked toward Lily's room while the other stayed with me in the living room. Can I ask who made the report? I said. The officer's expression was neutral. Anonymous tip. Said there were concerns about the child's welfare. Possible neglect. I bit back, the anger rising in my throat. There's no neglect. My daughter is healthy and happy. You're welcome to see for yourself. The officer who'd gone to Lily's room returned a moment later with Lily trailing behind him, rubbing her eyes and clutching her stuffed rabbit. She looked confused but not frightened. The officer knelt down to her level. Hi there, he said gently. I'm Officer Martinez. I just want to ask you a couple questions, okay? Are you doing okay? Do you feel safe here? Lily nodded, her voice small but clear. I'm okay. This is my home. The officer smiled. That's good. Is your mom nice to you? Does she take care of you? Lily looked at me, then back at the officer. Yeah. She makes me dinner and helps with my homework and reads me stories. She's the best. The officer stood and nodded to his partner. They conferred quietly for a moment, then turned back to me. Everything looks fine here, Officer Martinez said. But we have to file a report. If there are any further complaints, child services might get involved. I recommend documenting your daily routine and keeping records of your daughter's well-being, just in case. I thanked them, my voice tight, and showed them to the door. The moment it closed behind them, I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. Lily climbed up next to me. Mom, why were the police here? Did we do something bad? I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. No, baby. We didn't do anything bad. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and call the police when they don't need to. But everything's okay. She seemed satisfied with that answer and wandered back to her room to play. I sat there for a long time staring at nothing, my mind racing. An anonymous tip about child neglect. It was textbook. Create a paper trail. Get authorities involved. Make it look like there's a legitimate concern. Even. My kitchen table and opened my laptop. I pulled up the timeline document and began adding everything that had happened over the past few days. The false report to the police. The call to Lily's school. The threatening messages. The document was growing longer, more detailed, a roadmap of their campaign against me. I saved it and backed it up to 3 different locations, a cloud drive, an external hard drive, and a USB stick I planned to keep at Amanda's house. Then I opened a new document and titled it Strategy. If they were going to come at me from every angle, I needed to be ready. I needed to anticipate their next moves and cut them off before they could do more damage. I started making lists. People who could vouch for me as a parent. Amanda, obviously. Lily's teacher. Her pediatrician. The parents of her friends from school. Anyone who'd seen me with Lily and could testify that I was a good mother. Then I made another list. Evidence I still needed to gather. I needed to find out if they tried to file anything legal on their end. A custody petition, a grandparents' rights claim. Anything that might be sitting in the court system waiting to blindside me. I made a note to ask Kate to run a search. Finally, I made a third list. Their vulnerabilities. Things I knew about my family that they wouldn't want exposed. My mother's history of controlling behavior. The way she'd driven away 2 of her own siblings with her manipulations. Robert's temper. The time he'd put his fist through a wall during an argument. Nicole's struggles. The year she'd spent in therapy after a breakdown in college. I didn't want to use any of this. But if they forced my hand, I would. By the time I closed my laptop, it was past midnight. I was exhausted but too wired to sleep. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, my mother was probably awake too, planning her next move. We were locked in a battle neither of us had wanted, but both of us were too stubborn to walk away from. And in the middle of it all was Lily, innocent and oblivious, just wanting her mom and her grandma and her life to be normal. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and made myself a promise. No matter what it took, no matter how ugly this got, I was going to protect her. I was going to win. And when this was over, my family would understand exactly what I was capable of. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. Kate prepared me extensively, walking me through what to expect, the questions the judge might ask, how to present myself, what to say and what not to say. Stay calm, she reminded me repeatedly. Don't let them provoke you. Answer only what's asked. Let the evidence speak for itself. I nodded along, absorbing her instructions, but inside I felt like I was preparing for battle. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through potential scenarios in my mind. What if the judge didn't believe me? What if my family had fabricated evidence I didn't know about? What if I lost? Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. Typical November weather in Portland. I dressed carefully in a navy blazer and gray slacks, professional but not overdone. I pulled my hair back into a low ponytail and kept my makeup minimal. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a working parent trying to protect her child. Amanda offered to come with me for moral support, but I told her to stay with Lily. I'd arranged for Lily to spend the day at Amanda's house, away from all of this. She didn't need to know what was happening. Not yet. Kate met me outside the courthouse, her expression serious but confident. Remember, she said as we climbed the steps. You've done nothing wrong. You're the victim here. The evidence proves that. Just stay focused. We entered the courtroom and I saw them immediately. My mother sat in the front row on the opposite side, flanked by Robert and Nicole. Brandon was there too, sitting slightly apart, his arms crossed over his chest. They all turned to look at me when I walked in, and the hatred in my mother's eyes was so intense it felt physical. I forced myself to look away, to focus on Kate on the judge's bench, on anything but their stares. The bailiff called the court to order and Judge Margaret Colson entered. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every type of family drama imaginable, and had little patience for nonsense. She reviewed the case file briefly, then looked up at both sides. This is a petition for a restraining order filed by Jordan Hayes against Patricia Hayes, Robert Mitchell, Nicole Hayes, and Brandon Hayes. Ms. Wilson, you may present your case. Kate stood and walked to the podium, her movements precise and confident. Your Honor, my client is a single parent who has been subjected to a systematic campaign of harassment and illegal surveillance by her own family members. We have substantial evidence including physical surveillance devices recovered from Ms. Hayes' private residence, documentation of threats, false reports to authorities, and witness testimony. She began laying out the timeline, starting with the dinner at my mother's house where custody was first mentioned. She presented the cameras Marcus had recovered, along with his technical analysis showing they transmitted to my mother's address. She showed the judge screenshots of the threatening messages, particularly my mother's final text. You have no idea what I'm capable of. She detailed the false report to police and the malicious call to Lily's school. With each piece of evidence, I watched the judge's expression grow more severe. When Kate finished, Judge Colson turned to the other side. Mr. Brennan, your clients wish to respond? The lawyer representing my family stood. He was an older man with white hair and an expensive suit, the kind of attorney who probably charged $500 an hour. Your Honor, he began, his tone smooth and practiced. My clients are deeply concerned about their granddaughter and niece. They believe in good faith that the child's welfare is at risk. The surveillance Ms. Wilson referenced was undertaken solely to document concerning behavior they'd witnessed. The calls to authorities were made out of genuine worry, not malice. My clients love this child and simply want what's best for her. Judge Colson held up a hand. Mr. Brennan, are you arguing that your clients had the right to install surveillance cameras in Ms. Hayes' private residence without her knowledge or consent? The lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, in cases where a child's safety is concerned, sometimes extraordinary measures are necessary. The judge's expression hardened. That's not what I asked. Did your clients have legal authority to surveil Ms. Hayes in her own home? The lawyer shifted his weight. No, Your Honor, but the intent was protective, not invasive. Judge Colson made a note on her pad. We'll return to that. Ms. Wilson, I'd like to hear from your client directly. Ms. Hayes, please approach. I stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness stand. The bailiff swore me in and I sat down, my hands folded in my lap to keep them from trembling. Judge Colson looked at me with an expression that wasn't unkind but was absolutely assessing. Ms. Hayes, in your own words, tell me what's been happening. I took a breath and began. Your Honor, my relationship with my family was normal until about 2 months ago. That's when my mother started suggesting that my daughter Lily should live with her full time. At first, I thought she was just being helpful, offering to babysit more, that kind of thing. But then the comments became more frequent and more pointed. She started questioning my ability to parent. My siblings joined in, calling me stressed and overwhelmed. Things I wasn't. Then I discovered cameras hidden in my apartment, in my bedroom, in my bathroom, places where I had every expectation of privacy. I felt violated and frightened. When I took steps to protect myself legally, they retaliated by filing false reports with the police and my daughter's school. They're trying to build a case that I'm an unfit parent, and none of it is true. My voice cracked slightly on the last sentence, but I kept my composure. Judge Colson studied me for a long moment. Do you have any concerns about your family's intentions toward your daughter? I nodded. I believe they want to take custody of her. Not because she's in danger, but because they want control. My mother has always been controlling, but I never thought she'd go this far. The judge made another note. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to ask your clients directly. Mrs. Patricia Hayes, please approach. My mother stood, her movements stiff and deliberate. She walked to the witness stand and was sworn in, sitting with her back straight and her hands folded primly. Judge Colson wasted no time. Mrs. Hayes, did you install surveillance cameras in your daughter's apartment without her knowledge? My mother's face remained composed. I was worried about my granddaughter. I needed to see what was happening when I wasn't there. That's not an answer to my question, Judge Colson said sharply. Did you or did you not install cameras in Ms. Hayes' residence without her consent? My mother hesitated, and for the first time I saw a crack in her facade. Yes, she admitted quietly. but only because I was concerned. The judge leaned forward. Concerned about what specifically? My mother's lawyer started to stand, but the judge waved him down. I want to hear from Mrs. Hayes directly. My mother lifted her chin. Jordan has always been scattered, forgetful. She works too much and Lily suffers for it. I see my granddaughter being neglected and I couldn't stand by and do nothing. Judge Colson's expression was unreadable. Did you witness any actual neglect? Missed meals, lack of supervision, unsafe conditions? My mother faltered. Not exactly. But Lily told me her mother forgets things. That she's tired all the time. Judge Colson glanced at her notes. I have a statement here from Lily's teacher, a Mrs. Patterson, stating that Lily is well-adjusted, excelling academically, and shows no signs of stress or neglect. I also have statements from Lily's pediatrician indicating she's healthy and up to date on all medical care. How do you reconcile your claims with these professional assessments? My mother's face flushed. Teachers don't see everything. Neither do doctors. I'm her grandmother. I know when something's wrong. The judge set down her pen and looked at my mother with something close to disdain. Mrs. Hayes, what you've described sounds like normal parenting challenges, not neglect. And your response, installing hidden cameras and making false reports, constitutes harassment and invasion of privacy. Do you understand that? My mother's composure finally shattered. She's my granddaughter, she said, her voice rising. I have rights too. Grandparents have rights. Judge Colson's tone turned cold. Grandparents have visitation rights in some circumstances, Mrs. Hayes. They do not have the right to surveil their adult children or make unfounded accusations to authorities. You may step down. My mother returned to her seat, her face tight with barely contained rage. Robert put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off. Judge Colson reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting the restraining order. Patricia Hayes, Robert Mitchell, Nicole Hayes, and Brandon Hayes are hereby ordered to maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from Jordan Hayes and her residence. They are prohibited from contacting Ms. Hayes directly or indirectly, including through third parties. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. As for the issue of custody, I see no evidence that would warrant any change to the current arrangement. Ms. Hayes has sole custody and I see no reason to alter that. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. I felt Kate's hand on my shoulder steadying me. We'd won. I'd won. But as I stood and turned to leave, I caught my mother's eye one last time. The look she gave me was pure venom. A promise that this wasn't over despite what the judge had ruled. Kate ushered me out quickly and we stood in the hallway outside the courtroom. Her expression was triumphant but cautious. This is good, she said. But stay vigilant. Restraining orders are only as effective as the people who obey them. And your family doesn't strike me as the type to back down easily. I nodded, still processing what had just happened. Thank you, I said. For everything. She squeezed my arm. Go home. Be with Lily. Take a breath. We'll deal with whatever comes next when it comes. I drove to Amanda's house in a daze, the city passing by in a blur. When I arrived, Lily was in the backyard playing with Amanda's kids, her laughter carrying through the open window. Amanda met me at the door, her expression anxious. Well? She asked. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. We won. She pulled me into a fierce hug and I felt tears prick my eyes. I'd been holding it together for so long that the relief was almost painful. That night, Lily and I went home and I made her favorite dinner. We ate together and watched a movie cuddled on the couch. She fell asleep halfway through, her head on my shoulder, and I sat there holding her, feeling the weight of what I'd almost lost. My family had tried to take her from me. They'd invaded my privacy, lied to authorities, manipulated everyone they could reach. And they'd failed. But Kate's warning echoed in my mind. Stay vigilant. For the next 2 weeks, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I went to work, picked Lily up from school, came home. The routine was peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then, on a Friday evening 3 weeks after the hearing, I found it. I was sorting through the mail, mostly bills and junk, when I noticed an envelope that stood out. Plain white. No return address, my name and address printed in a generic computer font. I opened it carefully and pulled out a single photograph. The image made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Lily on the playground at school, taken from a distance with a zoom lens. She was on the swings, her face bright with joy, completely unaware she was being watched. I flipped the photo over. On the back, written in neat block letters, was a message. Restraining orders can't protect everyone. My hand shook as I set the photo down on the kitchen counter. They'd been at Lily's school. They'd photographed her. The restraining order prohibited them from contacting me, but apparently they'd found a loophole. Watch our daughter, don't talk to us, just let us know they were still there. Still watching. I called Kate immediately. When I told her about the photo, she swore. That's a violation, she said. Photographing a minor at school when you've been ordered to stay away. Bring it to me first thing Monday. We're filing a motion to hold them in contempt. But Jordan, you need to call the police too. This is stalking. I hung up and dialed 911, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. I explained the situation to the dispatcher and 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. They took the photo, logged it as evidence, and promised to follow up with the school to see if there was any security footage that might identify who'd taken it. That night I barely slept. I checked on Lily every hour, standing in her doorway watching the rise and fall of her chest. The next morning I pulled her out of school. I told the principal there'd been a security incident and I needed to keep Lily home until it was resolved. Principal Dawson was understanding, especially after I explained about the photograph. We'll increase our campus monitoring, she promised. And I'll make sure the staff knows to watch for anyone suspicious. But I knew that wasn't enough. They'd gotten close to Lily once. They could do it again. That afternoon I made a decision. I couldn't stay in Portland. Not with my family circling like predators. Kate had won me legal protection. But paper couldn't stop someone determined. Enough. I needed distance. Real physical distance. I called Amanda and told her I was thinking about leaving. Her response was immediate and supportive. Where would you go? I don't know yet, I admitted. Somewhere they won't think to look. Somewhere Lily and I can start fresh. She was quiet for a moment. If that's what you need to do, I support you. But Jordan, make sure you do it legally. Document everything. Get your lawyer involved. Don't just disappear or they'll use it against you. She was right. I called Kate and explained my plan. She didn't try to talk me out of it. Instead, she said, let me draft a motion to allow relocation. We'll present it to the judge, explain the ongoing harassment, and get formal permission. That way, if your family tries to claim you're violating custody terms or hiding Lily, you're covered. Within a week, we were back in court. Judge Colson reviewed the photograph, the police report, and Kate's motion. Her expression was grim. Ms. Hayes has demonstrated more than sufficient cause for concern, she said. I'm granting permission for relocation. Ms. Hayes may move anywhere within the United States with her daughter. The respondents are ordered to have no contact and no knowledge of their new location. If they attempt to locate or contact Ms. Hayes or her daughter, they will face criminal charges for stalking and violation of a restraining order. I left the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. That evening I began planning. I researched small towns in Oregon, places far enough from Portland that my family wouldn't think to look but close enough that I wouldn't lose all sense of familiarity. I found Ashland, a small town in southern Oregon near the California border. It was known for its Shakespeare Festival and arts community, the kind of place where people valued privacy and didn't ask too many questions. I contacted a realtor and within 2 weeks, I'd found a small house to rent, a 2-bedroom cottage with a fenced yard and a porch that overlooked the mountains. It was perfect. I gave notice at my job, told them I was relocating for family reasons. My boss was disappointed but understanding. I packed up our apartment methodically, room by room, taking only what we needed and leaving behind anything that felt tainted by what had happened. Lily took the news surprisingly well. She was sad to leave her school and her friends, but when I explained that we were going on an adventure to a new town where we could have a fresh start, she got excited. Will Grandma be there? She asked. I knelt down to her level and took her hands. No, sweetie. Grandma and I aren't getting along right now. It's going to be just you and me for a while. Is that okay? She thought about it then nodded. As long as we're together. My heart broke and swelled at the same time. The day we left Portland, Amanda came over early to help load the last boxes into my car. She hugged me tightly in the driveway, both of us crying. "You call me the second you get there," she said. "And visit. Or I'm driving down there myself." Promised I would. Then Lily and I got in the car and drove south, the city disappearing behind us in the rearview mirror. The drive to Ashland took about 5 hours. Lily chattered for the first half, pointing out cows and horses in the fields we passed. Then she fell asleep, her head resting against the window. I drove in silence, the landscape changing from urban sprawl to small towns to rolling hills to mountains. By the time we arrived, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Our new house was exactly as I'd seen in the photos, small and cozy with a welcoming front porch. I carried a sleepy Lily inside and tucked her into her new bed, which I'd had delivered ahead of time. She barely stirred. I stood in the doorway of her room for a long time, watching her sleep, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The first few weeks in Ashland were an adjustment. I found a job at a local marketing firm, smaller than my old company but friendly and flexible. Lily started at a new school and made friends quickly, the way kids do. We explored the town together on weekends, hiking trails and visiting the local bookstore and eating ice cream on the town square. Slowly, the tension that had been living in my shoulders began to ease. I stopped checking over my shoulder every time I left the house. I stopped jumping at unexpected noises. We were building a new life, one where my family couldn't reach us. But I never forgot what they were capable of. I kept the legal documents in a fireproof safe. I maintained contact with Kate, checking in monthly to make sure nothing new had been filed. And I taught Lily gently that if anyone ever asked about Grandma or our old life, she should come tell me first. 3 months after we moved, I received an email from Kate. Subject line: update. I opened it with my heart in my throat. "Jordan," she wrote. "Thought you'd want to know. Your mother attempted to file a grandparents' rights petition last week. She claimed you disappeared with Lily and she had no way to contact you. I appeared in court with documentation showing the judge had approved your relocation, and that your mother is under a restraining order. The petition was denied immediately, and the judge warned her that any further attempts to locate you would result in criminal charges. She's also being investigated for the photograph incident. One of the officers traced it back to a private investigator your mother hired. He's facing charges and she may face conspiracy charges depending on what the DA decides. You're safe. They can't touch you." I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. It was really over. They'd made one last desperate attempt and it had failed. The legal system had protected me. Distance had protected me. And now finally I could breathe. That evening I took Lily to a park near our house. She ran ahead to the swings while I sat on a bench, watching the sunset behind the mountains. The air was clean and cool, smelling of pine and earth. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, scared and reactive, constantly bracing for the next attack. I thought about the cameras hidden in my apartment, the threatening messages, the photograph of Lily that had sent me running. And I realized something. I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd been forced to become someone stronger, someone who could stand up to people I loved and draw lines I never thought I'd have to draw. Someone who could protect what mattered most, even when it meant burning bridges that could never be rebuilt. My family had tried to destroy me. Instead, they'd forged me into something unbreakable. Lily called to me from the swings. "Mom, look how high I'm going." I smiled and waved. "I see you, baby. You're doing great." She beamed and pumped her legs harder, her hair flying behind her. In that moment, watching my daughter laugh and play without fear, without the shadow of manipulation hanging over her, I felt something settle deep in my chest. We'd made it. We were free. And if my mother, if any of them, ever found us again, they'd discover exactly what I'd become. Not a victim. Not someone they could control or intimidate. I'd become a mother who would go to the ends of the earth to protect her child. And that was something they'd never be able to take from me. The restraining order was still in effect. The legal protections were still in place. But more than that, I'd found something I didn't know I had. My own strength. My own voice. The power to say no and mean it. To walk away from toxicity even when it wore a familiar face. To choose peace over obligation. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, I called Lily over and we walked home hand in hand. Our home. The one we'd chosen. The one where we were safe. And for the first time in a very long time, I slept through the night without waking, without checking locks, without listening for footsteps that would never come. Because I'd won. Not just in court. I won my life back. And nothing and no one would ever take it from me again. 6 months passed in Ashland like a long exhale. The seasons changed from winter into spring. And with them came a transformation I hadn't anticipated. Lily thrived in her new school, bringing home artwork covered in bright colors and stories about friends with names I was learning to remember. Emma, who shared her snacks. Jackson, who always picked her for his kickball team. Mrs. Chan, her second-grade teacher, who sent home notes about how well Lily was adjusting, how her reading had improved, how she volunteered to help other students. I kept those notes in a folder not as evidence anymore, but as reminders of what normal looked like. My job at the marketing firm turned into something more than just a paycheck. The company was small, only 8 employees, and they operated with a casualness that felt foreign after years in corporate environments. We had meetings on the back patio when the weather was nice. The owner, a woman named Diane who'd moved to Ashland from San Francisco 15 years earlier, brought her dog to work. There were no politics, no backstabbing, just people who genuinely seemed to enjoy what they did. I found myself relaxing into it, contributing ideas without second-guessing every word. Staying late not because I had to but because I wanted to finish a project I actually cared about. For the first time in my adult life, work felt like just one part of my existence rather than the thing I built everything else around. The house became ours in ways that transcended the rental agreement. We painted Lily's room a soft lavender she'd chosen herself. I hung curtains in the kitchen, real ones that I'd picked out at a local shop rather than whatever was cheapest online. We planted tomatoes and basil in the backyard, Lily's small hands helping me dig holes in the soil. On weekends we explored hiking trails that wound through forests so thick with trees the sunlight came through in fractured beams. We found a creek where Lily liked to search for smooth stones, piling them on the bank in careful towers that would wash away with the next rain. These were the moments I'd been too afraid to have before, too busy looking over my shoulder to notice what was directly in front of me. Amanda visited in April, driving down with her family for a long weekend. Seeing her pull into the driveway felt like a piece of my old life arriving, but the good piece, the part worth keeping. Her kids ran wild with Lily in the backyard while Amanda and I sat on the porch with coffee, talking the way we used to. She told me about Portland, about mutual friends, about the ordinary progression of life I'd left behind. Then she asked the question I'd been expecting. Have you heard anything from them? I shook my head. Kate sends me updates every month. Nothing new to report. The restraining order is still active. My mother tried one more petition about 4 months ago and it was dismissed again. After that silence, Amanda studied my face. And how do you feel about that? I thought about it, really thought about it. Relieved, I said finally, but also strange. Like I spent so long bracing for the next attack that I don't know what to do with the absence of it. She nodded. That makes sense. Trauma doesn't just disappear because the threat is gone. Have you thought about talking to someone? I had thought about it. In fact, I'd already started. A month after moving to Ashland, I'd found a therapist, Dr. Ellen Reyes, who specialized in family estrangement and recovery from psychological abuse. Our sessions were difficult, peeling back layers of guilt and anger and grief I hadn't fully processed. But they were helping. Slowly, I was learning to separate the family I'd wanted from the family I'd actually had. To mourn the former without excusing the latter. I told Amanda this and she squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? What you did, getting yourself and Lily out, fighting back, it took incredible strength. I felt tears prick my eyes but I blinked them back. Some days it doesn't feel like strength. Some days it just feels like survival. That's what strength is, Amanda said quietly. Surviving when everything in you wants to give up. After she left, I thought about her words often. Strength as survival. It reframed everything I'd been through. Made it feel less like a series of desperate reactions and more like a conscious choice to keep going. To protect what mattered. To refuse to be broken. Spring turned into summer and with it came Lily's 8th birthday. I threw her a party in our backyard, inviting kids from her class and their parents. I hung streamers and balloons, set up games, Ordered a cake decorated with butterflies because that was her current obsession. Watching her run around with her friends, laughing and sticky with frosting, I felt a swell of something I could only describe as victory. This was what my family had tried to take from us. This joy. This normalcy. This freedom to simply exist without fear. One of the mothers, a woman named Teresa whose daughter was in Lily's class, approached me while the kids were playing a game of freeze tag. "This is wonderful," she said, gesturing to the party. "Lily talks about you all the time, about how you do art projects together and go on hikes. She clearly adores you." The compliment landed somewhere tender, and I had to swallow past the sudden tightness in my throat. "Thank you. That means a lot." Teresa smiled. "I hope this isn't too forward, but a few of us parents get together sometimes for coffee or wine. You should join us. It'd be nice to get to know you better." I agreed, genuinely touched by the invitation. It occurred to me that I was building something here. Not just a new life for Lily and me, but a community. People who knew us only as we were now, not shadowed by the wreckage of what we'd escaped. July brought a heat wave that had everyone in town moving slowly, seeking shade and cold drinks. Lily and I spent our evenings at Emigrant Lake, a reservoir about 15 minutes from town where families gathered to swim and picnic. I'd pack sandwiches and fruit and we'd stay until the sun started to set, the water turning golden in the fading light. On one of those evenings my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, too comfortable in the moment, but something made me check the screen. It was Kate. I hadn't heard from her outside our monthly emails in months. My stomach clenched reflexively as I answered. "Kate." "Hi Jordan," her voice came through, professional but with an edge I couldn't quite place. "I wanted to give you a heads up about something. Your mother has been hospitalized." The words hung in the air, disorienting. I stood up from the picnic blanket, walking a few steps away from where Lily was building a sandcastle. "What happened?" "Heart attack," Kate said. "She's stable now, but it was serious. Nicole tried to contact you through the court system, asking for the restraining order to be temporarily lifted so you could visit. I denied the request on your behalf per our standing agreement, but I wanted you to know in case you feel differently." I stared out at the lake, processing. My mother was in the hospital, possibly dying. And my first emotion wasn't concern or sadness. It was a complicated knot of relief and guilt and something close to numbness. "Do I need to do anything?" I asked. "Only if you want to," Kate replied. "Legally, you're under no obligation. The restraining order stands regardless of her health status. I can have it modified if you decide you want contact, but that's entirely your choice." I thanked her and hung up, then stood there for a long moment, the sounds of children playing and water lapping at the shore fading into background noise. My mother was sick. My mother who had tried to take my child from me, who had invaded my privacy and manipulated everyone around her, and sent me running to another town to feel safe. I waited for the surge of filial obligation, the voice that would tell me I had to go, had to see her, had to make peace. It never came. What came instead was clarity. I didn't owe her my presence. I didn't owe her forgiveness. What had happened between us wasn't a misunderstanding or a fight that could be smoothed over with a hospital visit. It was a fundamental betrayal that had forced me to choose between her and my own well-being, between her desires and my daughter's safety. I'd made that choice, and I didn't regret it. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and called Dr. Reyes. "I know it's late," I said when she answered, "but I needed to talk." She listened as I explained about my mother's hospitalization, about Nicole's attempt to reach me, about the guilt I thought I should feel but didn't. When I finished, there was a pause. Then she said, "Jordan, what you're feeling or not feeling is completely valid. You've spent months healing from trauma this woman inflicted. The fact that she's ill doesn't erase what she did. It doesn't obligate you to re-traumatize yourself by returning to a situation that was harmful. Grief and guilt are normal, but so is self-preservation. You get to choose what's right for you. Do you want to see her?" The question was so simple and so complicated. Did I want to see her? I searched myself for the answer. "No," I said finally. "I don't." "Then don't," Dr. Reyes said gently. "You're allowed to protect your peace." I slept better that night than I had in days. The next morning I emailed Kate with my decision. I would not be modifying the restraining order. I would not be visiting. If my mother recovered, that was between her and her own conscience. If she didn't, I would process that when the time came. But I was done letting her dictate my emotional landscape. 3 weeks later, Kate sent another email. Your mother was discharged from the hospital. She's recovering at home. Nicole attempted one more contact through a third party and was reminded of the legal consequences. No further attempts have been made. I read the email twice, then archived it and went back to my work. My mother had survived. And so had I. August brought Lily's school registration for 3rd grade. We went together to meet her new teacher, Mr. Brooks, a young man with an easy smile who had his classroom decorated with posters about kindness and curiosity. Lily was nervous, clutching my hand, but by the time we left she was chattering about the reading corner and the class pet, a hamster named Buttons. On the drive home she said, Mom, do you think Grandma is ever going to visit us? The question came out of nowhere, casual in the way children's questions often are. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I don't think so, honey. Why do you ask? She shrugged. I just wondered. I miss her sometimes, but I like it here too. It's quieter. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Do you wish things were different? She thought about it. Sometimes. But mostly I'm happy. Are you happy? The question landed with unexpected weight. Was I happy? I took inventory. My job was fulfilling. My home was peaceful. Lily was thriving. I had friends, community, safety. I was sleeping through the night. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder. Yeah, I said softly. I am happy. Good, Lily said, satisfied, and went back to looking out the window. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color in the trees. I'd been in Ashland for almost a year. One evening after putting Lily to bed, I sat down with my laptop and did something I hadn't done in months. I opened the folder containing all the documentation from the case. The timeline. The photographs of the surveillance devices. The court transcripts. The threatening messages. I read through it all, not with the raw emotion I'd felt when living it, but with a strange detachment. This had happened to me. To us. But it felt distant now, like a story I'd heard rather than lived. I realized I was no longer defined by what they'd done. I'd moved beyond it. Built something new that had nothing to do with them. I closed the laptop and opened a blank document. Then I started writing. Not for a legal case or a therapist's assignment, but for myself. I wrote about the dinner where I'd received the warning text, except in my version there was no text, just my own intuition that something was wrong. I wrote about discovering the cameras and the moment I decided to fight back. I wrote about the fear and the anger and the small victories. I wrote about leaving Portland and finding Ashland and learning what it felt like to build a life on my own terms. By the time I finished, it was past midnight and I had 15 pages. I saved the document and titled it simply Reclamation. It felt appropriate. October brought the changing leaves and a crispness to the air that made everything feel sharper, more alive. Lily went trick-or-treating with her friends, a group of parents trailing behind with flashlights and laughter. I walked next to Teresa, who'd become a genuine friend over the past months, and felt the surreal pleasure of ordinary life. No one here knew what I'd been through. They knew me as Jordan, Lily's mom, the one who volunteered for the school fundraiser and made decent brownies for bake sales. That was enough. That was everything. On Halloween night, after Lily had sorted her candy into elaborate categories and finally gone to bed, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch. The neighborhood was quiet now, porch lights turned off, the excitement of the evening settled into stillness. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My heart rate spiked instinctively before I opened it. It was from Kate. Just wanted you to know I'm closing your file. No activity in 6 months. No attempts at contact. No new legal filings. As far as I'm concerned, you're in the clear. If anything changes, you know where to find me. But I think you're done. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times. I'm closing your file. You're done. The words felt monumental. It was really over. Not just paused or temporarily quiet, but finished. The threat had passed. The danger had dissipated. My family had finally given up. I typed back a simple thank you and set the phone down. Then I sat there on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the October chill, and let myself feel the full weight of that closure. I'd spent so long in fight or flight mode that I'd forgotten what it felt like to simply be. To exist without the constant hum of anxiety. to plan for a future that extended beyond the next crisis. November brought Thanksgiving and with it a decision. Amanda invited us to Portland for the holiday, promising that it would just be her family and us, safe and separate from anyone connected to my past. I considered it. Part of me wanted to go to see my best friend and let Lily spend time with her kids. But another part of me, the part that had fought so hard for peace, wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I declined gently, explaining that we were building our own traditions here. Amanda understood without me having to say more. Instead, Lily and I spent Thanksgiving with Teresa and her family, a chaotic, wonderful meal with too much food and too much laughter. Sitting at that table, surrounded by people who'd become our chosen family, I felt something slot into place. This was enough. This was more than enough. December brought the first snow, light dustings that turned Ashland into something from a postcard. Lily made snow angels in the backyard and I taught her how to make hot chocolate from scratch, the real kind with melted chocolate and cream. We decorated a small tree together, hanging ornaments she'd made in art class alongside a few I'd brought from Portland. On Christmas morning, she opened presents in our living room and didn't once ask why Grandma or Aunt Nicole hadn't sent anything. The absence of them had become normal. Expected. Not painful, just factual. We spent the afternoon at Diane's house with some of my coworkers, a potluck affair where everyone brought too much food and stayed too late. Driving home through the quiet snow-covered streets, Lily asleep in the back seat, I felt a contentment so profound it was almost unsettling. I'd forgotten life could feel this way. Simple. Safe. Mine. January marked a full year since I'd filed the restraining order. A full year since my life had been consumed by legal battles and surveillance and fear. I took Lily out for hot chocolate to celebrate, though I didn't tell her what we were celebrating. She didn't need to carry that weight. As we sat in the coffee shop watching snow fall outside the window, she said, "Mom, I'm glad we live here." "Me too, baby," I replied. "Me too." She smiled and went back to her hot chocolate, marshmallows melting into white swirls. And in that moment, I understood something I'd been circling for months. I'd won. Not just the legal battle. I won my life back. I'd won the right to raise my daughter without interference. I'd won peace. And perhaps most importantly, I'd won the knowledge that I was capable of protecting what mattered, even when the threat came from people I'd once loved. My mother's final message had promised I had no idea what she was capable of. She'd been wrong. I'd learned exactly what she was capable of. But more importantly, I'd learned what I was capable of. And that was something she could never take from me. February brought an unexpected letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, forwarded through Kate's office as per our arrangement for any contact that managed to find its way to me. I opened it carefully, half expecting another threat, another manipulation. Instead, I found a single page, handwritten in Nicole's neat script. "Jordan," it began, "I know I'm not supposed to contact you, and I'm sending this through your lawyer to respect the legal boundaries. I don't expect you to forgive me or want a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I didn't understand how far things had gone until it was too late. Mom convinced us we were helping, that you were struggling, that Lily needed us. I see now that we were wrong. That I was wrong. You're a good mother. You always have been. I hope wherever you are, you and Lily are happy. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. I'm working on forgiving myself. That's harder than I thought it would be. Take care of yourself. Take care of Lily. Nicole." I read the letter 3 times, searching for hidden agendas or manipulations. But it seemed genuine. Remorseful. I sat with it for several days, unsure how to feel. Eventually, I showed it to Dr. Reyes during our next session. "What do you want to do with this?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to respond, to acknowledge that she reached out. But I'm not ready for contact. I might never be ready. "That's okay," Dr. Reyes said. "Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You can acknowledge her apology without inviting her back into your life. You can wish her well from a distance. Or you can do nothing at all. All of those choices are valid." I ended up writing a short response which I sent through Kate. "Nicole, thank you for your apology. I appreciate that you've recognized the harm that was done. I'm not ready for direct contact and I may never be. But I hope you find peace with your own choices. I hope you're getting help to understand why you participated in what happened. Lily and I are doing well. We're happy and safe. That's all I'm willing to share right now. Take care. Jordan. Kate sent it for me and I heard nothing back. That was fine. The door wasn't slammed shut, but it wasn't open either. It was simply there. A boundary I could choose to adjust or maintain as I saw fit. March brought longer days and the first flowers pushing through the soil in our yard. Lily helped me plant a garden, vegetables and flowers mixed together in a way that probably violated every gardening principle, but made us both happy. We worked side by side, our hands dirty, the sun warm on our backs, and I felt the last pieces of tension I'd been carrying finally release. One evening, as we were washing up after planting, Lily said, "Mom, do you think we'll always live here?" I paused, considering the question. "I hope so," I said. "Unless you want to move somewhere else when you're older." She shook her head. "I like it here. I like our house and my friends and Mr. Brooks. I like that it's quiet." "Me too," I said softly. "Me too." April marked 18 months since we'd moved to Ashland. 18 months of normal life. Of school plays and parent-teacher conferences and weekend hikes. Of bills paid on time and groceries bought and meals cooked. Of friendships that deepened slowly, built on shared interests rather than shared trauma. Of therapy sessions that shifted from crisis management to genuine growth. Of nights when I slept soundly and mornings when I woke up without dread. I'd rebuilt my life from the ground up, piece by careful piece. And it was solid. It was mine. One Saturday afternoon, I was weeding the garden when my phone rang. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, old habits dying hard but curiosity won. "Hello? Jordan." It was a voice I hadn't heard in years. My aunt, my mother's younger sister. Someone I'd been close to before everything fell apart. She'd stayed neutral during the conflict, refusing to take sides, and we'd simply lost touch. I sat back on my heels, trowel still in hand. "Aunt Linda?" "Yes, honey, it's me. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from a mutual friend. Said you'd given permission for people you trusted to have it." That was partially true. I'd given Amanda permission to share my contact with a very select few people. Apparently Linda had made the list. "It's okay," I said cautiously. "What's going on?" She sighed. "I wanted you to know that your mother is moving. She sold the house in Hawthorne. She and Robert are relocating to Arizona. I think she's finally accepted that things with you aren't going to be repaired." The news landed with less impact than I would have expected. "Oh," I said. "Well, I hope the move goes well for her." Linda was quiet for a moment. "Jordan, I know things got bad. Really bad. I never knew the full extent until recently when Nicole finally told me everything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed support. Sorry I stayed neutral when neutrality was just another form of abandonment. You deserved better from all of us." The apology was unexpected and it cracked something open in my chest. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. "That means more than you know." We talked for a few more minutes, carefully avoiding the details of what had happened, instead focusing on the present. I told her about Ashland, about Lily, about the life we'd built. She told me about her own kids, about her job, about ordinary things that felt like a bridge back to a version of family that didn't hurt. Before we hung up, she said, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No pressure. No expectations. Just I'm here." I appreciated that more than I could express. After we hung up, I sat in the garden for a long time, the afternoon sun warm on my face. My mother was moving to Arizona, physically distancing herself from the place where everything had happened. Maybe that was her own form of letting go. Maybe it was surrender. Either way, it felt like the final punctuation mark on a chapter I'd already closed. May brought Lily's 9th birthday and with it, another backyard party. This one was bigger than the last, more kids, more parents, more evidence of the roots we'd put down in this community. Teresa brought a homemade cake. Diane brought a piñata shaped like a unicorn. Lily's teacher, Mr. Brooks, even stopped by briefly, bringing a book he thought she'd enjoy. As I watched Lily blow out her candles, surrounded by friends who knew nothing about surveillance cameras or court battles or families that imploded, I felt a surge of gratitude so intense it brought tears to my eyes. This was what I'd fought for. This moment. This normalcy. This joy that existed independent of trauma. That evening, after everyone had left and Lily was exhausted and happy in bed, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and pulled out my phone. I opened the Notes app and wrote a list. Things I've learned. Then I started typing. I've learned that family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people you choose. I've learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. I've learned that healing isn't linear and some days you'll feel like you've gone backwards but you haven't, you're just processing at your own pace. I've learned that home isn't a place, it's a feeling. And I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. Not because I wanted to be, but because I had to be. And now that I know what I'm capable of, nothing can break me. I saved the note and looked out at the quiet street, the mountain silhouette against the darkening sky. Somewhere in Arizona, my mother was starting over. Somewhere in Portland, Nicole was living with her regrets. But here, in this small house in this small town, Lily and I were simply living. Building a future one ordinary day at a time. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. Not the legal wins or the restraining orders or the distance, but the simple, profound act of surviving and then thriving. Of taking what they tried to destroy and building it into something even stronger. I raised my glass to the empty street, a silent toast to the woman I'd become. To the mother I'd always been but finally had the space to fully be. To the life I'd fought for and won. And then I went inside, locked the door behind me, and went to sleep in a house where I was safe, in a life that was wholly mine. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own moments of joy and stress and everything in between. But tonight I rested easy knowing that whatever came next I could handle it. Because I'd already survived the worst they could throw at me. And I'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and finally blessedly free. Summer arrived with a heat that felt cleaner somehow than Portland's humidity, dry and bright and full of possibility. Lily spent her days at a local summer camp where she learned archery and pottery, coming home each afternoon with stories that spilled out faster than I could absorb them. I'd started taking photography classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to try but never had the mental space for. On weekends we'd drive to nearby towns, exploring farmers markets and small museums, collecting memories that had nothing to do with the past and everything to do with who we were becoming. One Saturday in late June we drove to Jacksonville, a historic gold rush town about 15 minutes from Ashland. The main street was lined with buildings from the 1800s, antique shops and cafes tucked into structures that had somehow survived over a century. Lily was fascinated by a small museum that detailed the town's mining history, pressing her face against glass cases containing old tools and faded photographs. I wandered through at my own pace, my camera hanging around my neck, taking shots of the way light filtered through wavy antique glass windows. In the gift shop, Lily found a small gold-colored rock that the cashier assured her looked just like real gold ore. She clutched it in her hand all the way home, already planning where in her room she'd display it. That evening, as we made dinner together, pasta with vegetables from our garden that had finally started producing, my phone buzzed with an email. It was from Kate, the first communication I'd had from her in months. The subject line read "Final Update." I opened it while Lily set the table, her rock now sitting proudly on her dresser. "Jordan," the email began. "I wanted to let you know that the restraining order expired last month as per its 2-year term. Your family did not request a renewal or modification. There have been no attempts at contact, no legal filings, nothing. From a legal standpoint, this matter is fully concluded. You're under no obligation to maintain any vigilance or documentation. You're free. Completely free. I'm officially closing this case permanently. It's been an honor representing you. Take care of yourself and that wonderful daughter of yours. Best, Kate." I read the email twice, then set my phone down and stared at the kitchen wall. The restraining order had expired. 2 years had passed. 2 years since the worst of it. Since the courtroom and the cameras and the fear that had consumed every waking moment. And I hadn't even noticed the anniversary. It had come and gone while I was living my life, which felt like its own kind of triumph. Lily called from the dining room asking if dinner was ready, and I shook myself back to the present. "Yeah, sweetie, coming now." We ate together, talking about her day at camp and the friendship bracelet she was making for Emma. After she went to bed, I sat on the porch with tea instead of wine, feeling the need for clarity rather than relaxation. The restraining order was gone, which meant technically my family could contact me if they wanted to. The thought sent a small flutter of anxiety through my chest, but it was manageable, distant. Nothing like the paralyzing fear I'd felt 2 years ago. I realized I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I'd built something they couldn't touch, couldn't infiltrate, couldn't destroy. Even if they showed up tomorrow, they'd find a woman who knew her worth, who documented everything, who had a support system and legal history on her side. They'd find someone who wouldn't be manipulated or gaslit or made to feel small. The power they'd once held over me had evaporated, not because they'd changed but because I had. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Amanda. The restraining order expired. I'm officially free. Her response came within seconds. A string of celebration emojis followed by, "How does it feel?" I thought about it before responding. Like closing a book I've already finished reading. It's done. I'm done. And that's exactly how it should be. July brought the Shakespeare Festival that Ashlyn was famous for, and Lily and I attended an outdoor performance of A Midsummer Night's Dream. She was enchanted by the fairies and the magic, whispering questions throughout that I answered as quietly as I could. Afterward, we got ice cream and walked through Lithia Park, the central green space that ran through town like a ribbon. Families were everywhere, picnicking and playing, and I felt a deep sense of belonging that I'd never experienced in Portland. This was our town now. These were our people. The past felt like something that had happened to someone else entirely. In August, Diane offered me a promotion at work. Nothing extravagant, but it came with more responsibility and a salary increase that would let me start saving for the future. Maybe even buy a house instead of renting. The idea of permanence, of putting down roots so deep they couldn't be torn up, filled me with a quiet satisfaction. One evening after work, I stopped by Teresa's house to drop off some tomatoes from our overproductive garden. She invited me in for wine and we ended up talking for 2 hours, the kind of conversation that wandered from parenting to politics to dreams we'd had as children. At one point she said something that stuck with me. "You know what I admire about you? You never talk about your past like it defines you. You're just Jordan. Just yourself. Not running from anything, not proving anything. Just being." Her words settled into a part of me that had been waiting for that exact permission. To just be. Not the woman who escaped. Not the survivor of family trauma. Just Jordan. A mother. A friend. A person living her life with intention and peace. I thanked her, not trusting myself to say more without getting emotional, and drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. September brought Lily's first day of 4th grade. She'd grown over the summer, shooting up almost 2 inches, and her face had lost some of its baby roundness. She was becoming her own person, opinions and preferences solidifying in ways that sometimes surprised me. She wanted to join the school choir. She decided she didn't like mushrooms anymore even though she'd loved them last year. She had a best friend now, Emma, and they were inseparable. Watching her walk into school that first day, backpack bouncing, she didn't look back. A year ago that might have worried me. Now it just made me proud. She was confident, secure, unafraid. Everything I'd hoped to give her by making the choices I'd made. October brought an unexpected visitor. I was working in the garden on a Saturday afternoon, pulling up the last of the summer plants to prepare for fall planting, when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. My body tensed instinctively, old reflexes kicking in, but I forced myself to stay calm. A woman got out, someone around my age with blonde hair and a nervous smile. She approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Jordan Hayes?" she asked. I stood brushing dirt from my knees. "Yes. Can I help you?" She extended her hand. "I'm Rachel. Nicole's friend. Well, former friend. I need to talk to you about something and I promise I'm not here to cause problems." Every alarm in my body went off but I shook her hand cautiously. "What is this about?" Rachel glanced toward the house. "Is there somewhere we could talk privately?" I considered sending her away, calling Kate, protecting myself the way I'd learned to do. But something in her expression, genuine nervousness mixed with determination, made me pause. Let me get my daughter settled inside first. I called Lily in from where she'd been playing in the backyard and set her up with a movie and snacks, then joined Rachel on the front porch. She sat on the steps, her body language open and apologetic. "I'm here because I need you to know something that's been eating at me for almost 2 years," she began. "Nicole told me everything that happened between you and your family. Everything. And I need you to know that I tried to talk her out of it. All of it. The cameras, the manipulation, the fake reports. I told her it was wrong and illegal and cruel. But she wouldn't listen. None of them would. They were convinced they were saving Lily from some terrible situation that didn't exist. I leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed. Why are you telling me this now? Rachel looked down at her hands. Because Nicole's been in therapy for over a year now, and she finally understands what she did to you. What they all did. And she's destroying herself with guilt. I'm not asking you to forgive her or have contact with her. I know that's not my place. But I wanted you to know that she knows. She understands. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry too. Sorry I didn't do more to stop it. Sorry I didn't reach out to you directly to warn you. I was a coward and you deserved better. The apology was unexpected, and it stirred something complicated in my chest. I appreciate you coming here, I said slowly. And I'm glad Nicole's getting help. But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't undo the violation or the fear or the year of my life I spent fighting to keep my daughter. I know, Rachel said quickly. I'm not here to make excuses. I just needed you to know that the people who hurt you are living with the consequences. Your mother's marriage fell apart. She and Robert separated 6 months after moving to Arizona. Nicole lost her job and most of her friends. Brandon's barely speaking to any of them. What they did to you destroyed their family too. And maybe that's justice. Maybe that's what they deserved. I don't know. I just thought you should know you're not the only one who paid a price. I absorbed this information trying to decide how I felt about it. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part just felt sad. What happened to us, to all of us, was a tragedy born of control and manipulation and refusal to respect boundaries. That they were suffering now didn't bring me joy. Just felt like more waste. More damage. More proof that nobody won when families fractured this way. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. I mean that. But I need you to understand that I've moved on. I've built a life here that has nothing to do with them. And I can't let them back in, even through secondhand information or apologies. I need to keep that door closed for my own well-being and for Lily's. Rachel nodded, standing. I understand. I won't bother you again. I just needed to clear my conscience. She walked to her car, then paused and turned back. For what it's worth, Nicole said you were always the strongest person in your family. Think she was right. She drove away and I sat on the porch steps for a long time, watching clouds move across the afternoon sky. Learning that my family was suffering should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like confirmation that I'd made the right choice. Not because I wanted them to hurt, but because staying connected to them would have meant staying connected to that pain. I'd chosen peace instead. And I'd do it again. November brought Thanksgiving again, and this year I felt ready to return to Portland for the holiday. Amanda's invitation was still standing and I accepted, booking a hotel for Lily and me so we'd have our own space. The drive north felt different this time, not like running away or even running toward, just traveling. When we arrived at Amanda's house, the welcome was warm and overwhelming. Her kids tackled Lily with hugs and Amanda pulled me into an embrace that lasted longer than necessary. The house smelled like turkey and cinnamon and comfort. We spent the day eating too much and playing board games and laughing at inside jokes that stretched back years. At one point, Amanda and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, cleaning up while everyone else was in the living room watching football. You look different, she said, scrubbing a roasting pan. Lighter somehow. I smiled, drying a dish. I feel different. Like I'm not carrying something heavy anymore. She studied me. You're really okay, aren't you? This isn't just a front. I'm really okay, I confirmed. Better than okay, actually. I'm happy. And I mean genuinely happy, not just not miserable. There's a difference. She hugged me again, her eyes shining. I'm so proud of you. You know that? We drove back to Ashland the next day, and I realized something as we crossed back into Southern Oregon. Portland would always be a part of my history, but it wasn't my home anymore. Home was the small house with the garden and the mountains visible from the porch. Home was where Lily and I had built something new together. Home was where the past couldn't reach us. Not because we were hiding, but because we'd simply moved beyond it. December brought another quiet Christmas. Just Lily and me and our chosen family in Ashland. We hosted a potluck on Christmas Eve. Our small house packed with friends who'd become essential to our lives. Watching Lily help serve cookies she'd decorated. Seeing her laugh with other kids. Hearing the easy conversation of adults who knew us only as we were now. I felt a completeness I'd never experienced before. This was enough. This was everything. As the year wound down and I prepared to turn the calendar to a new year, I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. 3 years ago, I'd been sitting in my mother's dining room receiving an anonymous warning. 2 years ago, I'd been fighting in court for my basic right to parent my child. 1 year ago, I'd been settling into Ashland, still looking over my shoulder, still waiting for the next crisis. And now I was simply living. The woman who'd sat at that dinner table 3 years ago wouldn't recognize the person I'd become. That woman had been accommodating, conflict avoidant, willing to bend herself into shapes that pleased others. This woman knew her worth, knew her boundaries, knew that protecting herself and her daughter wasn't selfish, it was essential. That woman had been afraid of being alone, of losing family, of what others would think. This woman had learned that chosen family was stronger than blood, that being alone was better than being abused, that other people's opinions couldn't define her reality. That woman had doubted herself constantly. This woman trusted her instincts. New Year's Eve, I tucked Lily into bed and sat on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching neighbors set off fireworks in the distance. My phone buzzed with messages from Amanda, from Teresa, from coworkers, all sending love and hope for the year ahead. I responded to each one, grateful for the community I'd found. Then I opened my notes app one final time and wrote a message I'd never send, to the family I'd left behind. Forgive you. Not because you've earned it or because what you did was okay, but because carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm tired of letting you take up space in my head. I forgive you for trying to control me, for violating my privacy, for trying to take my daughter, for making me question myself when I was doing everything right. I forgive Nicole for her weakness, Brandon for his willful ignorance, Robert for his complicity, and Mom, I forgive you for being so consumed by your need for control that you destroyed what was left of our family. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Doesn't mean I forget. It doesn't mean I'll ever let you back in. It means I'm releasing the weight of what you did, so I can move forward completely unburdened. I hope you find peace with your choices. I hope you get the help you need. I hope you learn that love isn't control and family isn't ownership. But whether you do or don't, I'll be okay. Because I've learned the most important lesson of all. I don't need you to be whole. I saved the note but didn't send it anywhere. It was enough to have written it, to have articulated the freedom I felt. As midnight approached and the fireworks grew more frequent, Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Can I stay up till midnight?" she asked. I smiled and opened my arms. "Come here, baby." She curled up next to me under the blankets and we counted down together as neighbors shouted in the distance. When midnight struck and the sky lit up with color, I kissed the top of her head. "Happy New Year, Lily." "Happy New Year, Mom," she murmured, already half asleep. I carried her back to bed and tucked her in, watching her settle into dreams that were innocent and unburdened. Then I returned to the porch and looked out at the life I'd built. 3 years ago, I'd received a warning that had changed everything. And in the process of surviving what came after, I discovered something I never knew I possessed. The strength to stand alone, the courage to walk away, the wisdom to choose peace over reconciliation, and the absolute certainty that I would never again let anyone make me feel small. The past was behind me, the future was unwritten, and for the first time in my life that felt like possibility instead of threat. I was Jordan Hayes, mother to Lily, friend to many, survivor of nothing because I refused to be defined by what I'd overcome. I was simply a woman living her life on her own terms. And that, I realized as the last fireworks faded and the neighborhood settled into the quiet of a new year, was the greatest victory of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.